I didn't plan to throw a $2,000 bottle of Cristal in Garrett Wolf's face. I planned something much worse. My original scheme involved a projector. 40 seconds of damning footage showing bulldozers demolishing wolf dens, and a ballroom full of Manhattan's elite who'd just donated millions to his conservation charity. I'd spent 3 weeks perfecting my timing, memorizing security rotations, and bribing a catering coordinator with veterinary services for her epileptic cat. Everything was ready. The USB drive felt like a grenade in my clutch purse as I stepped into the plaza's grand ballroom, wearing a borrowed Valentino gown that cost more than my student loans. But plans change when you lock eyes with the devil himself across a sea of crystalline champagne flutes and white orchids. Garrett Wolf stood near the auction stage, commanding attention without effort. 6'3" of calculated power wrapped in a Tom Ford tuxedo that probably cost what I earned in 3 months. His dark hair was styled with that careless precision wealthy men achieve, and his jaw could cut glass. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Pale gray, almost silver, like winter ice over deep water. Predator's eyes. Those eyes found mine through 300 guests, and something electric shot down my spine. Recognition flashed across his face, though we'd never met. He couldn't know who I was. Yet his gaze locked onto me with the intensity of a wolf identifying prey, and his lips curved into something between a smile and a threat. My carefully constructed plan evaporated like morning dew. "That's him," I whispered to myself, my fingers crushing the stem of my champagne glass. "That's the man who killed my father's dream." 6 months ago, Wolf International had acquired Sinclair Wildlife Sanctuary through what the lawyers called a hostile takeover, and what I called legalized theft. My father had spent 30 years building that refuge in upstate New York. 200 acres of protected forest where injured wolves could heal and threatened packs could thrive. It wasn't just a sanctuary. It was his cathedral, his life's purpose, his reason for breathing after my mother died. Garrett Wolf bought the land from our creditors, demolished the rehabilitation center, and built a resort with a spa that offered wilderness experiences for guests who'd never seen real wilderness in their lives. The wolves were relocated to facilities across 3 states. My father suffered a stroke 2 weeks later. He survived, but the man who emerged from that hospital bed was a ghost, hollow-eyed and broken, unable to speak without slurring, unable to walk without assistance. The sanctuary had been hemorrhaging money for years. I knew that. The bank loans were crushing us. But we had plans, donors, a fundraising campaign that might have saved us. We just needed time. Garrett Wolf didn't give us time. He saw an opportunity and took it, the way wolves take down wounded prey. Now he stood in this palace of marble and gold, accepting praise from people who didn't know they were applauding a destroyer. The charity auction was his masterstroke, a conservation gala where wealthy socialites bid obscene amounts on African safari packages and Patagonian ecolodge stays, all while Wolf International's PR team photographed their generosity. 50% of proceeds went to wildlife organizations, the invitation promised. What it didn't mention was that those wildlife organizations were carefully selected to align with Wolf's business interests, or that his conservation resorts were built on the graves of actual wild spaces. I'd researched him obsessively for months. Garrett Wolf, 38, self-made billionaire, CEO of an empire spanning 47 luxury properties across 6 continents. No family, no visible weaknesses, no scandals. His Wikipedia page read like a superhero origin story. Orphaned at 12, emancipated at 15, built his first resort at 23, with money he'd somehow earned through investments nobody could quite track. Now he was Manhattan royalty, untouchable and unmarried, though tabloids linked him to a rotating gallery of models and actresses. The business profiles called him visionary. I called him a thief in expensive shoes. "Ma'am, would you care for a canapé?" A waiter materialized beside me with a silver tray. "No." My voice came out harder than intended. Actually, yes. All of them. He blinked, confused, but I was already lifting 4 tiny squares of something involving caviar and gold leaf onto my napkin. Stress eating. My therapist would be proud I was using food instead of screaming. The auction had started. A tanned man in a powder blue tuxedo was bidding $30,000 on a week at some Maldives property. The crowd applauded politely. I felt sick. This was wrong. I shouldn't be here, dressed in borrowed plumage, pretending to belong among people who considered my annual salary rounding error money. I was a veterinarian who spent her days elbow-deep in wolf intestines and eagle talons, who lived in a studio apartment that smelled permanently of antiseptic and dog hair. These people lived in penthouses with views of Central Park and vacation homes with views of private beaches. But I'd promised my father I'd make this right. On one of his good days, when his speech was almost clear and his eyes held traces of the man he'd been, he'd gripped my hand with surprising strength and whispered 3 words. Make them see. So I came to make them see. My phone buzzed. Text from my best friend and veterinary partner, Simone. You in? Don't do anything stupid. Define stupid. First, then don't do it. I typed back, in. Plan proceeding. Wish me luck. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, this is a terrible idea. I love you. Call me from prison. I pocketed the phone and grabbed a fresh champagne flute from a passing waiter. Dutch courage. My grandmother would be horrified. Harper Sinclair, drinking before confrontation. But my grandmother had never faced down a billionaire predator in a room full of his admirers. The auction continued. A wildlife photography expedition to Churchill, Manitoba, went for $45,000. A private villa in the Serengeti commanded $68,000. The amounts were obscene, meaningless. These people spent more on a vacation bid than most families earned in years. Then Garrett Wolfe took the stage. The room's energy shifted instantly. Conversations quieted, attention focused. He moved with absolute confidence, owning every inch of space he occupied. When he smiled, it didn't reach those winter ice eyes. Thank you all for your extraordinary generosity tonight, he began, his voice a dark velvet that filled the ballroom without effort. Your contributions will protect wild spaces and endangered species for generations to come. Liar. Beautiful, silver-tongued liar. Conservation isn't just about setting aside land, he continued. It's about creating sustainable models where nature and human experience coexist, where people can witness the sublime beauty of wilderness while funding its protection. This is the vision Wolf International pursues with every property we develop. My champagne glass was in motion before conscious thought. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring startled gasps and murmured protests. My borrowed Valentino gown snagged on someone's jacket, but I jerked free and kept moving. 3 steps from the stage. 2 steps. Security was starting toward me, but they were too slow, too surprised by a woman in an evening gown creating a disturbance. Garrett Wolfe's eyes found mine again. Recognition bloomed fully this time, mixed with something else. Curiosity? Amusement? Liar. My voice cracked across the ballroom like a whip. You're a liar and a destroyer. Then I threw the champagne. It hit him perfectly. Face, chest, that obscenely expensive tuxedo jacket. Cristal cascaded down his jaw and dripped onto his bow tie. The ballroom gasped collectively, a sound like oxygen being sucked from the room. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Garrett Wolfe stood perfectly still, champagne dripping from his hair, and locked eyes with me. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. Those wolf-pale eyes held mine with an intensity that made my knees weak and my pulse thunder. Then he smiled. Not a polite smile. Not an embarrassed smile. A predator's smile. All teeth and dark promise. Well, he said softly, his voice somehow audible despite 300 people. This is more interesting than another safari bid. Security rushed me from both sides, but Garrett raised one hand and they froze mid-step. "No," he said, never breaking eye contact with me. "Let her speak. I'm fascinated to hear what inspired such a dramatic entrance." My mouth went dry. This wasn't the script. He was supposed to be humiliated, angry, thrown off balance. Instead, he looked entertained. "You destroyed my father's sanctuary," I said, forcing strength into my voice. "Sinclair Wildlife Sanctuary. You bought it through shell companies and demolished it before we could fight back. 30 years of conservation work, gone, so you could build another playground for rich people who don't care about real wilderness." Sinclair. He tasted the name, recognition clicking into place. "The Wolf Sanctuary upstate. You're Harper Sinclair. You remember." "I remember every property I acquire." He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped champagne from his jaw with movements so calm they seemed choreographed. "I also remember that Sanctuary was bankrupt, violating multiple safety regulations, and hadn't passed a state inspection in 18 months. I saved those wolves from a failing facility. You scattered them across the country. You broke up established packs, separated bonded pairs. I relocated them to accredited facilities with actual funding and veterinary oversight." His voice remained level, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "Tell me, Dr. Sinclair, when was the last time your father's sanctuary could afford a full-time vet? Because according to the records, you were volunteering your services for free while working full-time at a clinic in Albany." Heat flooded my face. He'd researched me, studied my life while destroying it. "How dare you? How dare I save animals from substandard care?" He stepped closer to the stage edge. "Or how dare I refuse to fund someone else's bankruptcy with my personal fortune? Your father built something beautiful, Dr. Sinclair, but beautiful doesn't mean sustainable. I gave those wolves a future. You gave them champagne-soaked sentimentality." The room was utterly silent. 300 people watching our confrontation like spectators at a gladiator match. "You're twisting everything," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You didn't save anything. You saw profit and took it. And you see a villain where there's simply a businessman making difficult choices." He smiled again, and this time it was almost sad. "Throw me to the wolves if it makes you feel better, Dr. Sinclair. But I'm afraid you'll find I'm rather difficult to devour. I wouldn't waste my time trying." I lifted my chin, fighting the urge to throw my purse at him too. "I'd rather be thrown to actual wolves than spend another second looking at your face." Something shifted in his expression. The amusement vanished, replaced by something intense and unreadable. "Careful what you wish for," he said quietly. "I am the alpha of this pack, darling, and you just challenged me in front of my entire world." Then he turned to security. "Escort Dr. Sinclair out, gently. She's had a difficult year." The dismissal stung worse than any insult. I was being patted on the head and removed like a hysterical child. Security gripped my arms, professionally, not roughly, and I went rigid with impotent fury. "This isn't over," I promised him. Garrett Wolf's smile returned, sharp and dangerous. "No, Dr. Sinclair, I don't imagine it is." They escorted me through a service entrance and deposited me on Fifth Avenue like discarded trash. The November wind cut through my borrowed gown, and I realized I'd left my coat inside. Perfect. The champagne assault had cost me warmth, dignity, and probably my USB drive of evidence, which security had definitely confiscated from my purse. My phone exploded with texts from Simone. "Holy shit. Did you just... It's on Twitter. Call me now." I didn't call. I stood on the sidewalk in 4-inch heels I could barely walk in, shivering and furious, while Manhattan's elite departed the plaza in town cars and limousines. Nobody looked at me. I was invisible again. just another crazy person on a New York street. My grand confrontation had accomplished exactly nothing except making me look unhinged. Garrett Wolfe had deflected every accusation with calm logic that made me seem emotional and irrational. The video evidence I'd collected was gone. My one chance to expose him had resulted in him dismissing me like a tantrum-throwing child. I'd failed my father. Again. Dr. Sinclair. I spun around. A man in a black suit stood 3 feet away, hands clasped professionally in front of him. Not security. Something else. Private protection, maybe, or a personal assistant. His expression was neutral but not unkind. Mr. Wolfe would like to offer you a ride home. It's cold, and you don't have a coat. Tell Mr. Wolfe he anticipated you'd decline. The man's lips twitched with something like humor. He asked me to mention that your coat is in his car, along with your confiscated belongings, and that you can either ride with us or walk home in that dress while he keeps your things. His words were more polite, but that was the gist. Bastard. Absolute bastard. But I was freezing, my feet were screaming, and I lived 40 blocks away. Pride was a luxury I couldn't currently afford. Fine. I followed him to a black Mercedes S-Class idling at the curb. The back door opened, and I climbed inside, immediately regretting every decision that had led to this moment. Garrett Wolfe sat in the far corner, still in his champagne-soaked tuxedo, looking infuriatingly comfortable. He'd removed the bow tie, and his collar was open, revealing a triangle of tanned skin. His hair was damp and pushed back from his face, emphasizing those predator eyes. Dr. Sinclair. He handed me my coat. Where am I taking you? Hell, ideally, but I'll settle for the Upper West Side. His mouth curved. The Upper West Side it is. Address? I rattled off my street corner, not my actual building. The car pulled smoothly into traffic, and I wrapped my coat around myself like armor. The leather seats were heated. Of course they were. Your USB drive. He produced it from his jacket pocket. Security gave it to me. I haven't looked at it. Liar. I'm many things, Dr. Sinclair, but I don't lie. He set the drive on the seat between us. I'm sure it contains very compelling footage of construction vehicles demolishing unsafe structures. Perhaps some heartstring-pulling images of wolves in cages. Maybe even financial documents that, when presented without context, make me look like a corporate raider. Every word was accurate, and I hated him for it. Those wolves weren't in cages, I said tightly. They were in rehabilitation enclosures designed by wildlife experts. Wildlife experts who hadn't been paid in 8 months. He shifted slightly, and I caught a whiff of his cologne mixed with champagne. Something dark and woody that probably cost more than my rent. I have the personnel records, Dr. Sinclair. Your father couldn't make payroll. Staff were working for promises and passion. That's beautiful in theory, and catastrophic in practice. We had donors. You had potential donors who never materialized. I have those records too. He studied me with unsettling focus. I've spent considerable time trying to understand what happened at Sinclair Sanctuary. Your father was brilliant at animal care and terrible at business. He took loans he couldn't repay, made expansion plans he couldn't fund, and refused to adapt when circumstances changed. I don't fault him for it. Passion and pragmatism rarely coexist. You sound like you're reading from a consultant's report. I am. He smiled slightly. I have 3 separate analyses of the sanctuary's financials. Would you like to see them? No. Why not? Because I was afraid they'd confirm everything he was saying. Because facing the truth of my father's failures felt like betrayal. Because I'd spent 6 months constructing Garrett Wolfe as a villain when the reality might be infinitely more complicated. You still destroyed it, I said instead. You could have helped. You could have restructured, provided funding, offered expertise. You have unlimited resources. You chose demolition. I chose to honor the land your father loved by creating something sustainable." His voice softened almost imperceptibly. "The resort employs 2 full-time wildlife biologists. We've reintroduced native plant species your father's facility disrupted. Guests pay premium rates, and 20% of all revenue funds regional conservation efforts. In 2 years, we've contributed more to actual wolf protection than Sinclair Sanctuary managed in a decade. You're still building luxury accommodations in wild spaces. Yes, because humans are part of the ecosystem, Dr. Sinclair, whether you like it or not. We don't stop existing because it's inconvenient for conservation. We need to learn to coexist, and that requires exposure, education, and funding. My resorts provide all 3. I wanted to argue, but my brain was sluggish with exhaustion and champagne. The car's warmth was seeping into my bones, and Garrett Wolf's proximity was doing strange things to my nervous system. He smelled like expensive alcohol and danger. His presence filled the entire back seat. "You researched me," I said, changing tactics. "How thoroughly?" "Very." He didn't pretend otherwise. Cornell undergrad in biology, Penn State for veterinary medicine. Graduated top of your class. 3 years at Albany Veterinary Hospital, specializing in exotics and wildlife rehabilitation. Currently working at Manhattan Animal Medical Center, while volunteering at 2 wildlife rescue organizations. No social media presence, no public relationships, no digital footprint beyond professional credentials. You're either intensely private or intentionally invisible. Both. My skin prickled with discomfort. That's invasive. That's due diligence. You assaulted me at a charity event. I wanted to know who was throwing champagne at my face. You didn't press charges. Should I have? He tilted his head, genuinely curious. Would that have satisfied your sense of justice? Harper Sinclair arrested for assault at the plaza, her father's medical bills climbing while she sits in jail? Don't. My voice cracked. Don't pretend you care about my father. I don't pretend anything. Something fierce entered his expression. I care about wolves. Real conservation, not the fantasy version where we preserve nature in amber and pretend humans don't exist. Your father understood wolves better than anyone I've researched. His rehabilitation protocols were revolutionary, but he couldn't navigate the financial realities that would have kept his work alive. And you can. Yes. No hesitation. I built an empire by understanding what others miss. I saw value in your father's land beyond nostalgia. I'm sorry that process hurt you. I'm not sorry for the outcome. The car stopped at my corner. I should have left immediately, but something kept me frozen in place. Why did you let me speak? I asked. At the gala. You could have had security remove me before I said a word. Garrett's smile returned, predatory and beautiful. Because you fascinated me. Still do. Most people see me as either a savior or a destroyer, depending on their perspective. You see me as a villain, but you came armed with evidence and conviction. That takes courage. Stupidity too, but mostly courage. I'm not interested in your analysis of my character. No? He leaned forward slightly, closing the distance between us. Then why haven't you left the car yet, Dr. Sinclair? Because he was magnetic. Because his intensity pinned me in place like a butterfly to cork. Because some stupid, self-destructive part of me wanted to understand the man behind those wolf eyes. I grabbed my USB drive and opened the door. Stay away from me and my father. I'm not interested in your father, Garrett said quietly. But you're considerably more interesting than any business deal. I slammed the door and walked to my building without looking back. My hands shook as I unlocked the entrance. When I finally glanced toward the street, the Mercedes was gone. Simone called before I reached my apartment. What the hell happened? She demanded. You're trending on Twitter. Someone posted video. It's everywhere. I threw champagne at him. I know. I watched it 17 times. Why didn't you use the projector? I don't know. I saw him and something just... I kicked off the borrowed heels and collapsed on my couch. It went wrong. Wrong? Harper, you assaulted a billionaire on camera. That's not wrong. That's career suicide and possibly actual jail time. He's not pressing charges. Silence. Then, why not? I don't know. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our conversation. He said I fascinated him. Oh. Simone's voice changed. Oh no. Harper, no. Do not even think about... I'm not thinking anything except that I failed. I had one shot to expose him. And I blew it. Literally. You made national news. That's not nothing. People are talking about Wolf International's business practices. You started a conversation. A conversation he'll control and spin to his advantage. I closed my eyes. He's smarter than I expected. And more. More what? Compelling. The word felt dangerous. He's not what I thought he'd be. He's still the man who destroyed your father's sanctuary. I know. But doubt had wormed its way into my certainty. Simone, what if we were wrong? What if the sanctuary was actually failing? And Wolf's acquisition was the only thing that saved those wolves. Do not let him gaslight you into defending his actions. I'm not. I'm just... tired. Confused. Attracted to my enemy in a way that felt like betrayal. I need to sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up before she could protest and sat in the dark, still wearing my borrowed Valentino gown, thinking about gray eyes and dangerous smiles. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Garrett. The car will pick you up at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We need to talk properly. Don't bother refusing. I have your evening gown, and Valentino will want it back. I know you borrowed it from a friend at the museum. Come talk to me, or explain to her why you destroyed a $15,000 dress. I stared at the message, fury, and something else rising in my chest. How did you get my number? The same way I got the rest of your information. 9 a.m., Dr. Sinclair. Don't make me come collect you personally. I threw the phone across the room. Then I retrieved it, because I couldn't afford to replace it, and typed back, Where? My apartment. I'll send the address. Bring your appetite. We'll have breakfast and a civilized conversation. This is kidnapping. This is negotiation. 9 a.m. I promise not to bite. I don't believe your promises. Smart woman. A pause, then. The wolves at my resort are from your father's sanctuary. All of them. I bought space at other facilities temporarily, but I kept them together. Come see for yourself. My breath caught. You're lying. 9 a.m., Harper. The pack is waiting. I didn't sleep that night. I paced my apartment, researched Wolf International properties, and tried to find any evidence of his claim. Nothing. His resort's conservation programs were suspiciously well documented for everything except specific animal acquisitions. At 8:30, I dressed in jeans, boots, and my most professional blazer, armor disguised as casual wear. The Mercedes arrived at exactly 9. This time, it took me to a building on Billionaires Row. The penthouse elevator required a key card the driver provided. My stomach churned as the floors ticked higher. The doors opened directly into Garrett Wolf's home. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Central Park, turning gold with autumn. The space was enormous, but surprisingly understated. Exposed brick, dark wood, modern furniture that looked comfortable rather than ostentatious. Bookshelves lined one wall, packed with volumes on ecology, conservation biology, and wildlife management. And photographs. Dozens of them, covering an entire section of wall. Wolves, all wolves. Different packs, different locations, different moments, but every image captured with professional skill and obvious reverence. You're punctual. Garrett emerged from a kitchen wearing dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that emphasized his build. No tuxedo now, but he was somehow more intimidating in casual clothes. Coffee? Where are the wolves? I ignored his question. You said they were at your resort. Good morning to you too. He poured coffee anyway and brought it to me. They're upstate, 2 hours north. We can leave after breakfast, or you can starve out of stubbornness. Your choice. I took the coffee. Why? Why what? Why bring me here? Why tell me about the wolves? What do you want? Garrett smiled, and this time it reached his eyes, transforming his face from handsome to devastating. To understand why a brilliant veterinarian would commit professional suicide by assaulting me, and possibly to convince you that I'm not actually the villain in your story. You really think you're the hero? No. He moved closer, and I held my ground. I think I'm the wolf you mistook for a monster. And you, Dr. Sinclair, are the only person in years who's looked at me and seen something worth fighting. The air between us crackled with tension that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with something far more dangerous. Breakfast first, he said softly. Then I'll show you what I really did with your father's wolves. After that, you can decide whether to throw champagne or something considerably more interesting at me. The helicopter made me queasy, though I'd never admit it to Garrett. He piloted the machine himself, of course he did, with casual competence that suggested this was routine. We'd left his penthouse 90 minutes ago, after a breakfast of fresh pastries and tension so thick I could barely swallow. Now we flew over upstate New York, autumn forests spreading beneath us in waves of amber and crimson. The morning sun turned everything golden. It was beautiful, and I hated that I noticed. 5 minutes, Garrett's voice came through my headset. The property is just beyond that ridge. I didn't respond. I'd barely spoken since we left Manhattan, too angry and confused to trust my voice. He'd kidnapped me. Well, coerced me with the threat of destroying a borrowed dress and the promise of seeing my father's wolves. Same thing. But part of me had wanted to come, and that was the most disturbing revelation of all. The resort appeared like something from an architectural magazine. Low-slung buildings constructed from timber and stone, blending seamlessly into the landscape. No garish signage, no golf courses carved from wilderness, no swimming pools reflecting sunlight. Just elegant structures nestled among trees, connected by walking paths that curved naturally through the forest. "This is your resort?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. "This is Sinclair Ridge." He glanced at me, expression unreadable behind aviator sunglasses. I kept the name. Seemed appropriate. Something twisted in my chest. "You named your resort after my father's sanctuary. After your father's vision. He wanted to create a place where people could experience wolves in their natural habitat. So did I. We just had different ideas about execution." The helicopter touched down on a landing pad concealed among trees. As the rotors powered down, I unbuckled and climbed out before Garrett could assist me. The November air was crisp and sharp with pine scent. Somewhere in the distance, I heard water running. Probably the creek that had bordered the original sanctuary property. "This way." Garrett removed his sunglasses and started down a path. I followed, hyper-aware of his presence ahead of me, the breadth of his shoulders, the confident way he moved through space. Alpha energy, I thought bitterly. Of course he radiated dominance even walking through woods. We emerged into a clearing, and my breath caught. The enclosure was massive, at least 20 acres of natural forest, rocky outcroppings, and a stream running through the center. The fencing was nearly invisible, high-grade materials designed to contain without appearing caged. And moving through the space, comfortable and confident, was a pack of 6 wolves. My father's wolves. I recognized them immediately. Luna, I whispered, identifying the alpha female. She was older now, her muzzle showing more gray, but still magnificent. And Storm, and my throat closed. You kept them together. Yes. Garrett stood beside me, his attention on the wolves. The pack structure was too important to disrupt. Relocating them temporarily nearly destroyed them, so I built this. The enclosure wasn't just large, it was perfect. Natural water sources, elevated terrain for denning, enough space for a proper territory. This hadn't been thrown together. This was sophisticated, expensive wildlife management. The guests, I managed. Where do they? They don't come near the enclosure. Garrett pointed to a structure I hadn't noticed, an elevated viewing platform camouflaged among trees, positioned at least 100 yards from the fence. They observe from there, with telephoto lenses and guides explaining wolf behavior. Maximum twice daily, groups of 6 or fewer. The wolves barely register human presence. Luna raised her head, sniffing the air, her ears pricked forward, and suddenly she was moving toward us. The rest of the pack followed, curious but not alarmed. She remembers you, Garrett said quietly. Luna approached the fence line, her amber eyes fixed on me. I'd spent hundreds of hours working with this pack, treating injuries, monitoring pregnancies, documenting behavior. They knew my scent, my voice. "Hey, beautiful girl," I murmured, kneeling beside the fence. She came closer, near enough that I could see individual whiskers. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." Tears burned behind my eyes. I'd failed them. Failed my father. Failed everything. "You didn't fail them." Garrett's voice came from directly behind me. "You kept them alive until someone with resources could finish what your father started. You're not finishing anything. You're commodifying them. Look at this facility and tell me it's commodification." His tone sharpened. "I spent $8 million creating this enclosure. The resort generates enough revenue to fund wildlife corridors throughout the region. We've connected 17 fragmented habitats. 4 wolf packs now have safe passage between territories. Your father's sanctuary saved individual animals. I'm saving ecosystems." I stood abruptly, anger surging. "Don't you dare compare." "I'm not comparing. I'm building on his foundation." Garrett moved closer, his presence overwhelming. "Your father understood wolves better than anyone. But he was drowning in debt and fighting battles he couldn't win. I took his knowledge, his passion, his impossible dream, and I made it sustainable. By turning it into entertainment for wealthy tourists. By creating an economic model that funds conservation." He was in my space now, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "Every person who pays $20,000 for 3 nights here goes home as a wolf advocate. They see real predators in real habitat, and they understand why protecting wild spaces matters. They donate to wildlife organizations. They vote for conservation policies. They become allies instead of obstacles. They become your propaganda tools. They become educated." His jaw tightened. "You want to save wolves through purity and poverty. I want to save them through strategy and capitalism. Which approach do you think actually works? The one that doesn't require selling out everything wild and sacred. There's nothing left that's completely wild, Harper." My name on his lips sent electricity down my spine. Humans have touched every ecosystem on Earth. We're past preservation. We're in triage, and triage requires compromise. Luna huffed softly, drawing our attention back to the enclosure. She'd lost interest in us and was trotting toward the stream, the pack following. They moved with the easy confidence of animals in secure territory. "They're happy here," I admitted quietly. "Healthier than they were." "Yes, that doesn't make you right." "No." Garrett's voice softened. "But it makes me less wrong than you want me to be." We stood in silence, watching the pack. Storm, a massive gray male. Play bowed to one of the younger wolves, initiating a chase through the trees. Normal pack behavior. Healthy social dynamics. "Why did you really bring me here?" I asked without looking at him. "This isn't about convincing me you're benevolent. You don't care what I think. On the contrary." He moved to lean against a tree, giving me space I suddenly didn't want. "I care considerably about what you think. You're the first person in years who's seen past the money and reputation to challenge the actual work. I can buy approval and silence. I can't buy genuine criticism from someone who understands what I'm actually doing. So I'm what? Your conscience? Your reality check? You're interesting." His gray eyes held mine. "You're brilliant and passionate, and you threw champagne at me in front of Manhattan's elite. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How exhausting it is to be surrounded by people who never disagree, never challenge, never push back because they want something from you? Everyone wants something. What do you want?" He pushed off the tree and came toward me. "Really want?" The question hung between us. I should have said I wanted my father's sanctuary back. I wanted Garrett gone from our lives. I wanted to erase the past 6 months. But standing in the clearing with Luna's pack healthy and safe, with Garrett looking at me like I was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. "I want to understand you," I admitted. "I came here hating you. Now I don't know what to feel." "Good." He smiled, dangerous and beautiful. "Certainty is comfortable. Growth happens in confusion." That sounds like something from a motivational poster. It's from a conservation biology paper on adaptive management. He was very close now. Close enough that I could see flecks of darker gray in his eyes. I read it during the Sinclair acquisition. The author argued that clinging to old models kills more species than habitat loss. You have to be willing to be wrong to learn how to be right. And you're never wrong? Constantly. His laugh was low and genuine, but I adjust quickly. It's the only way to survive in an environment designed to eat you alive. "Is that how you see business? As predation?" "I see everything as predation." His expression grew serious. "Nature is predation. Commerce is predation. Even conservation is predation. We decide which species deserve saving and which are acceptable losses. The only question is whether you're predator or prey. And you're the predator. Always. No hesitation. But that doesn't make me the villain. Wolves aren't villains. They're essential. They maintain balance, cull weakness, create health in the ecosystem. I do the same in my industry. By destroying failing operations like my father's sanctuary, by redirecting resources to sustainable alternatives. He reached out slowly, giving me time to move away, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His fingers were warm against my cheek. "Your father was prey in a predator's world, Harper. Not because he was weak, but because he refused to adapt. I'm sorry that reality hurt you. I'm not sorry for being what I am. I should have stepped back. Should have slapped his hand away. Instead, I stood frozen, my heart racing, as Garrett Wolf cupped my jaw with surprising gentleness. "You're angry at me for surviving," he said quietly. "For thriving when your father couldn't. But anger won't rebuild what was lost. Strategy will, resources will. I can provide both, if you'll stop seeing me as the enemy long enough to recognize a potential ally." "An ally." My voice came out breathless. "Is that what this is?" "This is recognition." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "I see you, Harper Sinclair. Brilliant, stubborn, fierce. You could have accepted defeat, but you crashed my gala with champagne and fury instead. You're magnificent when you're fighting." "I'm not fighting anymore. I'm confused." Confusion is just fear of change. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. What if I'm not your villain? What if I could give you everything you want? Resources for conservation, a platform for your expertise, the ability to save wolves on a scale your father never imagined. At what cost? Working with me instead of against me. His lips curved. I'm offering you a partnership, Dr. Sinclair. A real one. Help me design conservation programs for all 47 Wolf International properties. Bring your knowledge and passion. I'll provide unlimited funding and global reach. My breath caught. You're serious? Completely. He pulled back slightly, giving me room to think. I've been searching for someone with your qualifications for months. Someone who understands wolves the way you do. Someone who gives a damn about real conservation instead of photo opportunities and donor dinners. Then you appeared in a borrowed Valentino and threw champagne at me. And I thought, finally, someone worthy of the fight. This is insane. This is opportunity disguised as chaos. He smiled. I'm very good at recognizing those. Luna howled from the enclosure, a long, rising call that the rest of the pack answered. The sound echoed through the forest, ancient and wild. Garrett and I both turned toward the wolves, the moment between us crystallizing into something neither of us could name. They're calling to the wild pack north of here, Garrett said. There's been a pack using the wildlife corridor we established. Luna's group answers them every few days. Wait, there's a wild pack nearby? 3 packs, actually, using the connected habitats. He pulled out his phone and showed me maps marked with GPS data, tracking points, territory markers. We monitor them through camera traps and radio collars. They're thriving, breeding. Your father's dream of protected wolf populations. I made it real. I stared at the data, at evidence of exactly what I'd spent my career hoping to achieve. Multiple healthy wolf packs with secure territory and genetic diversity. It was everything. Why didn't you tell anyone? I demanded. Why not publicize this? You could have used it for PR? He pocketed his phone. I'm not interested in credit. I'm interested in results. Publicizing wolf locations invites problems. Poachers, protesters, politicians looking to make examples. Better to succeed quietly than fail loudly. That's incredibly frustrating. That's strategic survival. He studied me intently. You want public recognition for conservation efforts. I want actual conservation. Those aren't always compatible goals. He was right, and I hated it. But he was also offering me something impossible. The chance to do my life's work on a scale I'd never imagined. To honor my father's vision with resources that made success probable instead of impossible. What's the catch? I asked. Nobody offers this much without strings. The string is you. His honesty was disarming. I want you here, working with me, fighting with me when necessary. I suspect that will be often, but fighting toward the same goal instead of against each other. You want me to work for you, with me. He emphasized the distinction. As Chief Conservation Officer of Wolf International, design and implement conservation programs across all properties. Unlimited budget, full operational authority, direct reporting to me. You'd have more power to protect wolves than anyone else in private conservation. My mind reeled. I have a job, a practice, patients depending on me. Keep your practice. Work part-time if you want. But bring your expertise here where it can scale. One veterinarian treating individual animals versus systematic conservation protecting entire ecosystems. Which serves your father's memory better? It was manipulation, obvious and effective. He knew exactly which buttons to push. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. He gestured toward the enclosure. Luna and her pack aren't going anywhere. Neither am I, but the offer has an expiration. How long? Until you throw champagne at someone else. His smile was wicked. I don't share well. Despite everything, I laughed. You're impossible. I'm persistent. He offered his arm with exaggerated formality. Come, there's more to show you. The rehabilitation facility, the breeding program, the education center. If you're going to make an informed decision, you need to see everything. I hesitated, then took his arm. His warmth bled through the sweater fabric, solid and real. We walked deeper into the property, Luna's howl fading behind us, and I wondered if I was stepping into salvation or seduction. Probably both. The rehabilitation facility was everything I'd dreamed the original sanctuary could become. Climate-controlled medical bays with surgical suites that rivaled human hospitals, isolation wards for sick or injured animals, quarantine areas for new arrivals, 3 full-time wildlife veterinarians, and a support staff of 12. Dr. Martinez is our senior vet, Garrett explained, introducing me to a woman near my age wearing scrubs covered in muddy paw prints. She came from the Bronx Zoo. Before that, she worked with wolf reintroduction programs in Yellowstone. Dr. Martinez shook my hand with firm enthusiasm. Harper Sinclair, I know your work. Your paper on rehabilitation protocols for wolf pups separated from pack structures. We use it as training material. It's brilliant. The compliment caught me off guard. Thank you. That research was mostly done at my father's sanctuary. I know. We've tried to honor those protocols here. She gestured around the facility. Mr. Wolf gave us carte blanche to design this place. We incorporated everything from your father's notes and your published research. In a way, this facility is a continuation of his work. Something tight in my chest loosened slightly. My father's knowledge hadn't been erased. It had been built upon, expanded, professionalized. Part of me was grateful. Part of me was furious that it had taken Garrett Wolf's money to accomplish what should have been protected and funded all along. Current patients? I asked, slipping into professional mode. 2. Dr. Martinez led us to the first recovery bay. Young male, maybe 18 months, found with an infected leg wound. Probably from a territory dispute or prey animal. We've been treating him for 3 weeks. Infection's cleared, but he needs another week before release. I examined the wolf through observation glass. He was thin but alert, favoring his right foreleg slightly. His coat showed signs of stress-related shedding. Release where? The Northern Corridor Pack. We've confirmed through genetic testing that he's likely from that group. Once he's fully healed, we'll release him at the edge of their territory. You don't just release them randomly? I couldn't hide my surprise. Never. Dr. Martinez looked offended by the suggestion. We identify pack affiliations, monitor health for weeks after release, and coordinate with state wildlife officials. Every release is documented and tracked. Mr. Wolf is very particular about proper protocols. I glanced at Garrett, who was leaning against a counter watching me with those unreadable gray eyes. You micromanage conservation work? I provide resources and demand excellence, he corrected. Dr. Martinez and her team have complete operational control. I just require they follow best practices and document everything. Accountability isn't micromanagement. It's also not cheap, Dr. Martinez grinned. But arguing for bigger budgets with Mr. Wolf is the easiest part of my job. He never says no to anything that improves animal welfare. We spent 2 hours touring the facility. Every detail was carefully considered, from the acoustics designed to minimize stress on animals, to the separate entrance for transporting large predators to the staff housing on site so veterinarians could respond to emergencies within minutes. This wasn't a vanity project. This was serious, professional wildlife medicine at the highest possible level. The breeding program is controversial, Garrett said as we walked toward another building. I'd like your opinion before we expand it. The breeding facility was smaller, more controlled, climate-controlled dens, monitoring equipment, genetic tracking software displaying lineages and diversity metrics. We're working with 3 genetically distinct wolf populations, Dr. Martinez explained. The goal is to increase genetic diversity in regional packs without disrupting natural breeding patterns. Very careful, very slow. We only breed pairs with significant genetic separation, and offspring are always released into appropriate territories. Captive breeding is a last resort, I said automatically, my conservation training kicking in. It should only happen when wild populations are critically endangered. Agreed. Garrett pulled up data on a tablet. Regional wolf populations are stable but isolated. Genetic diversity is declining. We're providing genetic rescue, not replacing wild reproduction. But I wanted expert opinion on whether this crosses an ethical line. I studied the data. He was right. The genetic modeling showed clear bottlenecks in 3 local populations. Without intervention, inbreeding depression would become a serious problem within 2 generations. It's borderline, I admitted. But if release protocols are solid, and you're truly supplementing rather than replacing natural breeding. I trailed off thinking. I'd want to see long-term data, multi-year studies on released animals, proof that you're not creating dependency. We have 5 years of data. He handed me another tablet loaded with research papers. Not published yet. We're waiting for 10-year results before going public. But preliminary evidence suggests released animals integrate successfully into wild packs without behavioral abnormalities. I scrolled through the research, my scientific brain engaging despite my emotional resistance. The methodology was sound. Sample sizes were reasonable. Control groups were appropriate. This was legitimate conservation science. This is publishable now, I said. Why wait? Because I want it to be unassailable. Garrett's voice was firm. Conservation is under constant attack from people who don't understand or don't care about wildlife. I won't publish anything that gives ammunition to critics. This work needs to be perfect before it becomes public. That's an impossible standard. That's my standard. He held my gaze. I don't do anything halfway, Harper. Not business, not conservation, not... He paused. Not anything that matters. The air between us charged again with that dangerous electricity. Dr. Martinez coughed diplomatically. I should check on our other patient, she said, already backing toward the door. Harper, wonderful meeting you. Mr. Wolf, I'll have those surgery reports on your desk by tomorrow. Then she was gone, and Garrett and I were alone in a facility designed to save wolves. You're trying to buy my approval, I said quietly. Show me all this impressive work and make me forget you destroyed my father's sanctuary. I'm showing you the truth. He moved closer. I didn't destroy anything. I transformed it. Your father's knowledge is embedded in every protocol here. His passion drives this work. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking you to see what came after. And if I can't separate the two, then you'll spend your life angry at the man who could give you everything you want. His voice dropped lower. Is that really how you want to honor your father's memory? Fighting battles already lost while refusing opportunities to win new ones? You're manipulative. I'm persuasive. He smiled slightly. There's a difference. Manipulation involves deception. I'm being completely honest. I want you here because you're brilliant, because you understand wolves the way I understand business, and because fighting with you is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in years. You think I'm interesting because I threw champagne at you. I think you're interesting because you're real. He reached out, tucking another strand of hair behind my ear. Everyone in my life is performing, acting how they think I want them to act. You performed at the gala, but the performance was confrontation instead of compliance. You were authentically furious. That's rarer than you might think. I'm still angry. Good. His thumb traced my jaw. I don't want your compliance. I want your expertise, your passion, your willingness to tell me when I'm wrong. Be angry. be challenging. Just be those things while building something that matters instead of destroying us both with resentment. Us? My heart hammered against my ribs. There is no us. There could be. His voice was barely above a whisper. A partnership, a collaboration, a convenient arrangement where you get a conservation expert and I get distracted from the fact that you crushed my father's dream. A genuine alliance where we both get to do meaningful work. His eyes searched mine. I'm not your enemy, Harper. I never was. I'm just a man who sees value differently than you do and has the resources to act on that vision. You sound like a corporate mission statement. I sound like someone who spent the last 24 hours trying to figure out how to convince you to take a chance on something that terrifies you. He was so close now that I could feel his breath. You're afraid I'll corrupt your ideals. But what if instead you could influence mine? What if we made each other better instead of making each other miserable? That's a fantasy. That's a possibility. His hand cupped my cheek fully now. Take the job, Harper. Not because you forgive me. Because you want to accomplish things that matter. Because you're tired of treating symptoms instead of solving systemic problems. Because somewhere deep down, you know this is the path forward, even if it's not the path you planned. I should have pulled away, should have maintained professional distance. Instead, I leaned into his touch, drawn by something I couldn't name and couldn't resist. If I take this job, I said carefully, it's because of the work, not because of you. Understood. His smile was triumphant and gentle. I'll take what I can get. And I'm going to challenge every decision you make, question every protocol, push back on anything that prioritizes profit over conservation. I'm counting on it. He leaned closer still, until our foreheads almost touched. I need someone who won't let me cut corners or compromise standards. You're exactly that person. I might drive you insane. You already do. His laugh was low and warm. But it's the best kind of insanity. Then he kissed me, and every argument I'd prepared evaporated like morning mist. His lips were firm and confident, claiming mine with the certainty of someone who'd never learned to doubt himself. I should have pushed him away, should have maintained boundaries. Instead, I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his sweater, pulling him closer even as my logical brain screamed warnings. He tasted like coffee and danger. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss. And I let him, surrendering to something I didn't understand and couldn't control. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Garrett's eyes had darkened to storm cloud gray. That, he said roughly, was not part of my professional recruitment strategy. Good. I was trembling slightly. Because if it was, I'd have to file a harassment complaint. Would you? His thumb traced my swollen lower lip. Or would you kiss me again? I hate that I want to. I'm familiar with the feeling. He rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to kiss you since you threw champagne at my face. Do you have any idea how maddening that is? Probably as maddening as wanting to kiss someone who destroyed everything you care about. I didn't destroy everything. His voice turned serious. I destroyed one version of your dream, but I can give you a bigger dream, if you're brave enough to take it. I pulled back, needing space to think. This is insane. 24 hours ago, I hated you. Now I'm kissing you in a wolf breeding facility. Technically, you're kissing me back. He smiled. But your point stands. This is fast. Probably too fast. We should slow down. We should. Neither of us moved. Harper, he said quietly, all humor gone from his voice. I need you to understand something. I didn't buy your father's sanctuary to hurt you. I didn't even know you existed until I started researching the facility's history. This was business. Sad, uncomfortable business that destroyed something beautiful but saved the animals within it. I won't apologize for that. but I am sorry you were collateral damage. Collateral damage. I tested the phrase. Is that what I am? You were. He cupped my face with both hands. Now you're something much more interesting. Now you're the woman who made me rethink every assumption about conservation, business, and what actually constitutes success. You challenged me, Harper, and I haven't been genuinely challenged in years. So I'm what? Your new puzzle? Your latest acquisition? You're my equal. The words hung between us, weighted with meaning. The first person I've met who might actually be able to keep up with me. That's rare enough to be precious. And I don't take precious things lightly. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Simone, probably, wondering if I'd been murdered by a billionaire. I ignored it. I need conditions, I said, if I take this job. Name them. Full operational control over conservation programs. You provide budget and resources, but I make all decisions about animal welfare, release protocols, and scientific standards. Agreed. Quarterly reports to independent conservation oversight boards. No PR spin on our work until I approve it. Done. And this, I gestured between us, stays separate from professional decisions, if we're going to, whatever this is. It doesn't affect my work. Impossible. His smile was wicked. Everything affects everything. But I promise not to let personal feelings compromise professional standards. Good enough? It wasn't. But nothing about this situation was rational or safe or remotely sensible. I want to see my father, I said. Before I give you a final answer, I need to tell him about all this. Of course. Garrett released me, stepping back to give me room. I'll have the helicopter take you back to Manhattan. Think about the offer. Visit your father. Take whatever time you need. How much time do I have? Until you throw champagne at someone else. His expression turned serious. I mean that, Harper. This offer stands until you decide, whether that's tomorrow or next month. I'm not pressuring you into something you're not ready for. Even though you just kissed me? Especially because I kissed you. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking less composed. That was selfish, and probably stupid, and definitely not something I should have done before you'd made a professional decision. So forget it happened. Pretend I'm just a businessman making a job offer. I can't forget it happened. Neither can I. His voice dropped to something almost vulnerable. But I can wait while you figure out what you want. I'm good at patience when something matters. Luna howled again from the distant enclosure, a long, lonely call that echoed through the facility. The breeding wolves answered from their separate building, and for a moment, the property filled with wolf song. They're calling to something, I said. What are they hearing? Each other. Garrett moved to stand beside me, not touching, but close. And the wild packs beyond. They're negotiating territory, reinforcing bonds, communicating across distances. It's what wolves do. They call out to see who answers. Is that what we're doing? I looked up at him. Calling out to see who answers. Maybe. He held my gaze. Or maybe we already answered, and now we're figuring out what comes next. The helicopter waited to take me home. The job offer waited for my decision. My father waited for answers I didn't have. But standing in the wolf facility with Garrett Wolf's kiss still warm on my lips, I wondered if I'd already made my choice the moment I threw that champagne. Maybe I'd been calling to him even then, challenging, provoking, demanding he see me. And he had answered, as predator, as partner, as something I couldn't yet define. The wolves howled again, and I listened, and I wondered if I had the courage to howl back. My father's room at the rehabilitation center smelled like antiseptic and old books. He'd insisted on surrounding himself with conservation journals and wildlife photography, even though reading exhausted him now. The stroke had stolen his mobility and most of his speech, but his eyes remained sharp. Those same gray-blue eyes I saw every morning in the mirror. "Hi, Dad." I kissed his forehead and settled into the chair beside his bed. "I have news. Complicated news." He made a sound. Not quite words, but I'd learned to interpret his vocalizations. This one meant he was listening and ready to be patient while I found the right words. "I met Garrett Wolfe." The name felt strange in my mouth now, loaded with meanings I couldn't untangle. "The man who bought the sanctuary. I threw champagne at him at a charity gala." Dad's eyes widened, then crinkled with what might have been laughter. His left hand, the one that still worked, lifted slightly. Approval? Amusement? Both? Then he took me to his property upstate. Dad, he kept the wolves together. Luna's pack. They're all there, in this massive enclosure. 20 acres of natural habitat. He built a rehabilitation facility that's better than anything we could have dreamed. He's running breeding programs, funding wildlife corridors, employing real conservation scientists. My father's expression changed. Confusion mixed with hope, mixed with something I couldn't identify. He offered me a job, chief conservation officer for his entire company. I'd design programs for 47 properties worldwide, unlimited budget, full operational control. I gripped his hand. "It's everything you wanted to accomplish, Dad. Global scale, real impact, actual funding. But it's his company, his vision. And I don't know if taking it means betraying you or honoring you." Dad's fingers tightened around mine. He struggled to speak, lips forming sounds his damaged brain couldn't quite connect to words. I waited, giving him time. After several attempts, he managed 2 syllables. "Show me." I pulled out my phone and opened the photos Garrett had sent. The enclosure, the facility, Luna and her pack. Detailed shots of the medical equipment, the breeding program data, the corridor maps showing connected wolf territories. My father studied each image with the intensity he'd once reserved for examining injured animals. His functioning hand moved restlessly, pointing at details, asking questions he couldn't voice. "This one is the surgical suite," I explained. 3 full-time vets, including Dr. Martinez from Yellowstone. And this is the genetic diversity data. They're supplementing isolated populations without creating dependency. More images, more impossible wonders built with Garrett's money and vision. My father's expression cycled through emotions too complex to name. Finally, he made a sound that approximated a word. "Good." "Good?" I leaned closer. "You think it's good?" "Dad, he bought your sanctuary." Another sound, sharper, frustrated. His hand moved in a gesture I recognized. "Listen." He pulled me close with surprising strength, his breath labored. Then, with enormous effort, he forced out 3 words that came out slurred but comprehensible. "Better than nothing." The words hit me like a physical blow. Better than nothing. My father's sanctuary was dead, but Garrett's version was alive and thriving and accomplishing more than we'd ever managed. Better than nothing meant accepting compromise, admitting defeat, moving forward instead of clinging to beautiful, unsustainable dreams. "You want me to take the job?" I said slowly. He nodded, once, decisively, then added another laborious phrase. "Not about me. It's absolutely about you." He shook his head with a stubbornness that even a stroke couldn't erase. His hand moved to his chest, then pointed at me. Not about him. About me. About my future. My chance to do the work that mattered regardless of who provided the resources. I kissed him. I confessed suddenly. "Garrett, I don't know why I'm telling you this except, Dad, I came there hating him. And now I don't know what I feel. He's arrogant and manipulative, and he sees the world as something to be conquered and optimized. but he's also brilliant and passionate about conservation. And he's using his power to actually protect wolves instead of just talking about it. My father made a sound that might have been laughter. His eyes gleamed with something knowing and amused. Then, with visible effort, he forced out one more word. Alpha. I stared at him. What? He pointed at his chest again, then at me, then made a gesture encompassing everything around us. Alpha. He was telling me that recognizing another alpha wasn't betrayal. It was nature. Wolves understood hierarchy and strength. They didn't resent the alpha for being powerful. They respected it. You think Garrett's an alpha? It wasn't a question. Dad nodded, then tapped his temple. Smart. Then his heart. Good? The question mark was in his expression. I don't know if he's good, I admitted. But he's effective. And he's offering me the chance to be effective too, on a scale I never imagined. My father's smile was crooked from the stroke, but it reached his eyes. He patted my hand with his working fingers. Permission, blessing, encouragement. Then he made one final effort. Proud. Tears burned behind my eyes. You're proud? He nodded firmly. Proud that I'd confronted Garrett. Proud that I'd fought for the sanctuary. Proud that I was being offered this opportunity. He wasn't disappointed in me for considering Garrett's offer. He was proud I'd earned it. I love you, Dad. I kissed his forehead again. Thank you for everything, for teaching me about wolves and conservation and fighting for what matters. I promise, whatever I decide, I'll make you proud. He squeezed my hand. The conversation was exhausting him, but his expression was peaceful, settled. He'd given me what I needed, not answers, but permission to find my own way forward. I stayed with him another hour, reading aloud from one of his beloved conservation journals. His eyes closed, but I knew he was listening. When the nurse came to help him with dinner, I kissed him goodbye and stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzing immediately with messages. Simone. Where are you? Simone. You've been gone for 12 hours. Simone. I'm calling police in 10 minutes. I typed quickly. I'm fine. Saw Dad. Have news. Can we meet? 15 minutes later, I was at our usual coffee shop near the clinic, and Simone was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You went to his apartment. Her voice was flat with disbelief. You got into a car with the billionaire you assaulted and went to his private residence. Harper. What the hell? He has Luna. I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. The whole pack. They're together at his upstate property in this incredible facility. He's running legitimate conservation programs. It's everything Dad wanted to build. So he bought your forgiveness with a nice enclosure. No. I met her eyes. He bought my attention with evidence that maybe I was wrong, or at least not entirely right. Simone, the work he's doing is real, professional, scientifically sound. I spent hours examining the facilities and research data. It's not propaganda, it's genuine conservation. Conservation funded by luxury resorts. Conservation that's actually succeeding because it has funding. I leaned forward. Look, I hate that it requires compromise. I hate that we're creating economic models where rich people's vacation spending protects wildlife. But hating it doesn't make it less effective. Garrett's resorts have created 17 connected wildlife corridors. His rehabilitation facility has released 43 wolves over 5 years with a 92% survival rate. Those are real numbers with real impact. Simone studied me carefully. What else happened? He offered me a job. Of course he did. Chief Conservation Officer, Global Program Design, unlimited budget. It's an incredible opportunity. It's a golden cage. She gripped her coffee too tightly. He's co-opting you the same way he co-opted your father's sanctuary, making it look generous while serving his interests. Maybe. I couldn't deny the possibility. Or maybe it's genuine collaboration where we both benefit. Simone, I'd have more resources to protect wolves than anyone else in private conservation. 47 properties where I could implement protection programs. Global reach. Real influence. With him controlling the purse strings. With him providing resources I'd never access otherwise. I ran a hand through my hair. You think I don't know this is complicated? But conservation is always complicated. Every funding source has strings. Government grants have political agendas. Private donors have pet interests. Corporate sponsorships have PR requirements. There's no pure option where you get money without compromise. So you're justifying selling out. I'm recognizing reality. My voice hardened. Dad's sanctuary failed because we refused to compromise. We were ideologically pure and practically broke. That purity didn't save a single wolf when the bank foreclosed. Garrett's approach might be morally ambiguous, but it's keeping wolves alive and thriving. Which matters more? My comfort with the funding source or actual conservation outcomes? Simone was quiet for a long moment. You like him? What? No, But the denial died on my lips. I don't know what I feel. He's infuriating and arrogant and manipulative, but he's also brilliant and passionate and genuinely dedicated to conservation. And he sees me, really sees me, as an equal instead of a subordinate or an obstacle. Did you sleep with him? No. Heat flooded my face. But we kissed. Once. Okay, more than once. It was stupid and complicated, and I immediately regretted it. Did you? Simone's eyebrow arched. Because you're blushing like a teenager. It was a mistake. A moment of insanity. It won't happen again. Unless you take the job and work closely with him every day. She sighed. Harper, I love you. You're my best friend and the smartest person I know. But you're also stubborn and idealistic, and sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. This man crushed your father's dream. That doesn't disappear because he rebuilt something shinier. I know. The admission hurt. But Dad told me to take it. What? I explained the conversation, my father's reactions, his final word of pride. Simone listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through surprise and understanding. Your dad's giving you permission to move on, she said finally. That's beautiful. But Harper, permission to move on doesn't mean you have to move on with Garrett Wolfe. You could take a job with any conservation organization. You're brilliant. You have options. Not options like this. I met her eyes. Be honest. Where else could I have this much impact? What other organization would give me complete operational control and unlimited funding? She couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Conservation work was underfunded and overstretched everywhere. Organizations competed desperately for limited resources. The chance to work without financial constraints was unheard of outside billionaire philanthropy. Just promise me something, Simone said quietly. Promise you're taking this job, if you take it, for the work and not for him. I promise. But the words felt hollow even as I said them, because I wasn't sure I could separate the two anymore. My phone buzzed. Garrett, have you made a decision? No pressure, but my board meeting is in 48 hours, and I'd like to announce your appointment if you're interested. I stared at the message, my heart racing. 48 hours to decide my professional future and personal ethics, to choose between comfortable failure and complicated success. Another text. Luna's pack brought down an elk this morning. Natural predation in the enclosure. Dr. Martinez has video if you want to see your father's wolves thriving. Manipulation? Or genuine sharing of something he knew would matter to me? With Garrett, both could be true simultaneously. I typed, "Send the video." It arrived seconds later, stunning footage of Luna leading her pack in a coordinated hunt. They moved like liquid shadows, communicating through body language and subtle vocalizations. The kill was quick and efficient. Afterward, the pack fed in hierarchical order, peaceful and content. My father had dreamed of creating space for wolves to be wolves. Garrett had made it real. I made my decision. I'll take the job. Conditions we discussed stand. When do I start? 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, Monday. I'll have contracts ready tomorrow. Welcome to the pack, Harper. I set down my phone and looked at Simone, who was watching me with worried eyes. I took it, I said. I know. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Just promise you'll be careful. Wolves are pack animals, but they're also predators. Don't forget which one you're dealing with. I won't. But as I returned the squeeze, I wondered if I was the one being hunted, or if I'd just joined the hunt myself. 6 months later, I stood in Garrett's office, our office now, reviewing plans for a new conservation property in Patagonia. Snow fell heavily outside the windows of Wolf International headquarters, turning Manhattan into a winter wonderland that would become gray slush by afternoon. The Chilean government is offering us 200,000 acres, I explained, pointing to the map. But there are existing ranching operations throughout the territory. We can't just displace people for conservation. Agreed. Garrett leaned back in his chair, studying the data with the same intensity he brought to everything. He'd shed his suit jacket hours ago, working in rolled shirt sleeves that emphasized the lean strength of his forearms. What if we partner with the ranchers? Hybrid model, sustainable grazing that benefits the ecosystem while creating economic incentive for predator protection. Ranchers won't protect pumas that kill their livestock. They will, if we compensate losses, and they see tourism revenue from wildlife watching. He pulled up financial projections, make conservation profitable for locals, and they become allies instead of adversaries. This was our rhythm now, challenge and counter-challenge, pushing each other toward better solutions. In 6 months, we'd launched conservation programs across 17 properties. The work was grueling, exhilarating, and more fulfilling than anything I'd done in my life. Working with Garrett was like dancing with a wolf, thrilling and dangerous and requiring absolute attention. The board approved the Patagonia budget, he added. $15 million over 3 years. You have full authority to design the program. $15 million. The number still staggered me. That's more than most conservation organizations spend globally in a year. That's what it costs to do this right. He smiled slightly. You've taught me that, if nothing else. No corners, no compromises, just proper professional conservation work. I've created a monster. But I was smiling too. You've become insufferable about research protocols. You love it. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the professional setting. You love pushing me to be better. He wasn't wrong. Somewhere between Montana and Madagascar, between wolfpack monitoring and board presentations, I'd fallen completely for Garrett Wolf. Not the billionaire developer or the corporate raider. The man who helicopter piloted himself to remote properties to check on individual animals. Who read conservation biology papers at midnight and texted me questions about genetic bottlenecks. Who gave me unlimited resources and never second-guessed my decisions. The man who looked at me like I was the most fascinating creature on Earth. We'd maintained professional boundaries for exactly 3 weeks after I started. Then there was the incident in Alaska, a brown bear wandering too close to resort guests, protocol requiring evacuation, both of us working through the night to coordinate wildlife officials and protect both humans and bear. We'd succeeded, collapsing exhausted in the site manager's office at dawn, and suddenly his mouth was on mine, and all the carefully constructed professional distance evaporated like morning mist. We'd been together since then, though together was an inadequate word for what we'd become. Partners in every sense, professional and personal, challenging and supporting each other, building something neither of us could have created alone. The board wants to announce the Patagonia project at next month's gala. Garrett said, pulling me back to business. I told them you'd need to approve all PR materials first. The board is learning. I grinned. Remember when they wanted to call that Jaguar Mr. Spots for marketing purposes? I remember you threatening to resign. He laughed. That was the day I knew we'd actually succeed together. You prioritized conservation over my company's reputation without hesitation. You prioritized my professional standards over board politics. That's when I knew you were serious about this partnership. I'm serious about everything involving you. The intensity in his voice shifted the mood. Harper, there's something I want to discuss, not about work. My heart kicked up. Okay. The northern pack at Sinclair Ridge had pups, 5 of them. Dr. Martinez confirmed they're thriving. He pulled up photos on his tablet, adorable fuzzy wolf pups tumbling over each other. Luna's grand pups, if you trace the lineage. Your father's sanctuary bred those wolves' great-grandparents. Emotion caught in my throat. Dad would be so happy. I thought we could name them, officially, for the records. Garrett's hand found mine. I was hoping you'd help me choose names that honor your father's work. It was such a small gesture, but it meant everything. Garrett understood that this wasn't just conservation. It was legacy, memory, honoring what came before while building something new. I'd like that. I squeezed his hand. Thank you. There's more. He stood, moving to the windows overlooking the city. The Foundation Board approved your proposal for the Sinclair Conservation Fellowship. Full funding for 5 graduate students annually to study wolf conservation and work across our properties. It'll be administered through Cornell, your father's alma mater. I couldn't speak. The fellowship had been my dream, creating educational opportunities that would train the next generation of wildlife conservationists. Garrett had supported it without hesitation, allocated funding that would sustain it indefinitely. You're doing this for me, I managed. I'm doing it because it's good conservation practice. He turned to face me. But yes, also for you, because your vision makes everything we do better. Because your father's knowledge deserves to continue teaching people long after. He paused. Your father's health is declining. Dr. Morrison called yesterday. The rehab center physician. My chest tightened. What did he say? That you should visit soon. That your father is comfortable, but weakening. Garrett crossed to me, pulling me into his arms. I'm sorry, Harper. I know how hard this is. I buried my face against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent, letting his strength steady me. My father had been declining for months, each visit showing new losses. He couldn't speak at all anymore, could barely move, but his eyes still held recognition, still watched wildlife documentaries I played for him, still communicated love when I held his hand. I'll go this weekend, I said into Garrett's shirt. Will you come with me? Of course. He kissed the top of my head. Anything you need. I need you. The words came out raw and honest. I need you to keep pushing me to be better, to keep building this impossible thing we're creating, to keep fighting with me about conservation protocols and making me laugh when I'm taking myself too seriously. I can do that. His arms tightened around me. I plan to do that for a very long time. Decades, if you'll let me. I pulled back to look up at him. Decades. Harper. His expression was serious, vulnerable in a way that Garrett Wolfe never showed the world. I didn't plan for you. Didn't expect to meet someone who'd challenge every assumption I had about myself and what I wanted. But you crashed into my life with champagne and fury, and you've been rewriting my entire existence ever since. I'm not that dramatic. You're exactly that dramatic. He smiled. And brilliant and stubborn and passionate about things that matter. You make me better, Harper. Not just professionally, though yes, Our conservation work is infinitely stronger with your expertise. But personally, you remind me why I started building this empire in the first place. Not for money or power, but to create something meaningful. Garrett, let me finish. He cupped my face with both hands. I know we started wrong. I know I hurt you and your father, even if I didn't intend to. I know there are days you still resent me for how we met. But Harper, I love you. Completely. Ferociously. The way wolves love their mates, loyal and permanent and fierce. My breath caught. We'd been dancing around those words for months, both of us too cautious or too scared to make them real. I love you too, I whispered. Even though you're arrogant and manipulative and you reorganized my entire filing system without asking. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. I'm never going to live down the filing system, am I? Never. I kissed him, soft and slow. But I forgive you, for the filing system and for everything else. My father was right. You're an alpha. And I'm tired of fighting against that instead of fighting alongside it. So fight with me. His voice turned serious again. Marry me, Harper. Build this life we're creating together officially. Make it permanent. The proposal hung between us, weighted with everything we'd become to each other. 6 months ago, I would have thrown more champagne. Now, standing in our office with snow falling outside and wolf pack data surrounding us, I felt only certainty. Yes, no hesitation. But I have conditions. He grinned. Of course you do. We get married somewhere meaningful, not some Manhattan social event. Somewhere with wolves. Agreed. What else? You keep letting me challenge you. Keep listening when I push back on decisions. Keep treating me as an equal partner in everything. Harper. His voice softened. You've never been anything but my equal. That's why I fell in love with you. And we establish a proper board for the conservation division. Independent oversight. I won't build an empire without accountability, even if it's your empire. Our empire, he corrected gently. And yes, everything you want. I'll put it in writing if that makes you trust me more. I trust you. The words felt revolutionary. I don't always agree with you, but I trust that you want the same outcomes I do. We just have different ideas about how to get there. And together, we find better solutions than either of us could alone. He kissed me again, deeper this time. That's what makes us dangerous. We're not predator and prey anymore. We're two alphas hunting together. My phone buzzed. Dr. Martinez with updates from Patagonia. Garrett's buzzed simultaneously. Board members wanting answers about quarterly projections. We broke apart reluctantly, both reaching for our devices, already mentally shifting back to the work that consumed us. Tonight, Garrett said, reading his messages. We celebrate properly. Dinner somewhere quiet. Just us. I'll cook. I was already typing responses. You bring wine. Good wine, not that pretentious burgundy you pretend to like. I do like it. You tolerate it because it's expensive. I grinned at him. But you'd rather have a craft IPA and pizza. I pay attention. You pay attention to everything. He looked at me with such warmth that my chest ached. It's one of approximately 8,000 things I love about you. We worked through the afternoon, occasionally calling observations across the office to each other, collaborating on problems, debating solutions. This was our life now. Conservation work and paperwork, board meetings and field research, fighting for wolves while building an empire that protected them. When we finally left the office, snow was still falling, transforming the city into something magical and temporary. Garrett's driver waited, but Garrett waved him off. Let's walk, he said, taking my hand. It's only 20 blocks. We walked through Manhattan in the snow, two people who'd crashed together violently and created something neither expected. Former enemies who'd become partners, lovers, co-conspirators in conservation, The city hummed around us, alive and indifferent, while we moved through it together. "I meant what I said," Garrett said quietly. "About decades, about building this life together. You've changed everything, Harper. Given me purpose beyond profit, reminded me why any of this matters. You've given me resources to actually make a difference." I leaned against his shoulder as we walked, and challenged me to think bigger than I ever imagined. "We make each other better." "We do." He stopped, pulling me close despite the crowds flowing around us. "Thank you for throwing champagne at my face. Best thing that ever happened to me." I laughed, the sound bright in the cold air. "Thank you for not pressing charges, and for keeping the wolves together, and for seeing me as more than the angry daughter of a failed sanctuary owner. You were never that." His expression turned fierce. You are magnificent. The woman who challenged an alpha and made him better, who brought passion and purpose to an empire that needed both, who loves wolves fiercely enough to fight anyone who threatens them, including me. Especially you. I kissed him softly. You're the most dangerous threat I've ever faced. Because you made me want things I thought I couldn't have. Made me compromise principles I thought were absolute. Made me fall in love with the person I was supposed to hate. I'm very good at being dangerous. His smile was pure predator. But only to people who need challenging. You needed someone to push back as hard as you push. Someone who wouldn't break under your intensity. Someone alpha enough to handle me. Someone who loves you enough to be handled by you. He tucked a snow-dampened strand of hair behind my ear. It goes both ways, Harper. You've tamed me as much as I've challenged you. I haven't tamed anything. I laughed. You're as ruthless and intense as ever. You just aim it in better directions now. Because you give me better targets. He started walking again, arm around my shoulders. Come on, pizza and terrible beer waiting at home. And maybe, if you're very nice, I'll let you reorganize my filing system as revenge. I'm going to rearrange everything alphabetically by species, just to watch you twitch. You're terrifying, but he was smiling. I love it. We walked home through falling snow, two predators who'd found their pack in each other. Behind us, Manhattan gleamed with ambition and opportunity. Ahead, our apartment waited, home and sanctuary and base camp for building an empire of conservation. And somewhere upstate, Luna's pack howled to the winter night, wild and free in the space we'd protected for them. Living proof that sometimes the right kind of compromise created something better than either purity or profit alone. Sometimes, the alpha found his mate by recognizing another predator. And sometimes, throwing champagne at a billionaire's face was the beginning of everything that mattered. 3 months later, we married under the Aurora Borealis in Alaska. The ceremony was small, just Simone and Dr. Martinez as witnesses, my father watching via video link from his bed at the rehab center, and a pack of Arctic wolves our Alaskan property hosted. As Garrett slipped the ring on my finger, a custom-designed band featuring a wolf etched in platinum, the aurora flared brilliant green across the sky. The Arctic pack howled their approval, and I realized my father had been right all along. This wasn't betrayal. This was evolution. We'd built something new from the ruins of what came before. Not perfect, not pure, but real and thriving and making genuine difference in the world. Garrett kissed me while wolves sang and auroras danced, and I knew we'd spend our lives fighting together, for conservation, for each other, for the wild spaces and creatures that couldn't fight for themselves. 2 alphas, 1 pack, and every wolf in the world a little safer because we'd found each other.